Dr. Carol Dweck is the author of this awesome book called Mindset. I'm telling you, it can change your life. Not in like New Age, it'll change your life, it'll be a different person. It'll change your life because it'll help you change your thinking. Or it could help you change your thinking. In the end, it's your choice. So in this book, there are two types of thinking. There is a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And we, as individuals, fall on a spectrum. As adults, we understand that everything's not black and everything's not white, everything's not good, everything's not bad. So you are not just fixed mindset or growth mindset. We understand we fall through here. So I'm watching a lot of you like, oh, I better write this stuff down. Just so you know, mindbodycheer.com, I have all of this information. I have pictures, which is sometimes way cooler than actually having to listen to me talk because it's really boring. Zone out if you need to and come back when I'm trying to be funny and laugh with me so I don't feel silly up here. But just so you know, mindbodycheer.com has all this information. So on the website and in the book, Mindset by Carol Dweck, she talks about the spectrum of growth mindset and fixed mindset. And the reason that this is so spectacular, I want to talk about it in terms of adults, but I feel like it's actually more appropriate to talk about it in terms of your children. Your kids either chose a sport, or a sport chose them, who knows, that is literally the most subjective sport that we know that's out there. Subjective meaning you really have very little basis on what the results are, why they are the way they are. We are getting better. We are becoming more objective. How did we do that? We're starting to make rubrics. We have our kids in levels, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're allowing our kids to be with people who have like skills. That's great. But when they go and compete, the reality is, I've been a judge, you stand up there and you watch routines and they start blending together because like skills in a rubric are all seen as the same. Okay, and I bring that up because the reality is we're in a subjective sport. You're also picking a sport, or your child has picked a sport where they're wearing tight-fitting clothing. Not necessarily in an offensive way or not appropriate way. We're trying to, as a community, make it more appropriate and so it's an athletic wear. But regardless, studies have shown that, especially females in sports that are subjectively based and with, let's say, tighter-fitting clothing, have more rigidity in what they are and who they are. And I'll talk about it a little more when I get into nutrition. But I think it's important that we start understanding, was our child always like this, or are they starting to change based on the environment they're in being treated? So let me get into what growth mindset actually is. So the fixed mindset would say, I am innately intelligent. I am innately talented, which means I am born with a certain amount of something. Where a growth mindset would say, that is not true. I am able to improve my talent or skill, and I am able to improve my intelligence by the amount of efforts and time that I put into something. Most of us are here, are logical enough to look at that and go, well then I would be growth mindset. I do not think that I am born good or bad at something. Sure, I may have a susceptibility to be better at something or not, but I do think with hard work, we get better. But listen to some of the messages that we actually say to our kids. You learn that so quickly, you're so smart. Look at that drawing. Oh, honey, isn't she the next Picasso? You're so brilliant. You got an A on that test without even studying. You're so talented, you're a natural. What we're trying to do is build our child's self-esteem, right? We're just trying to make them feel really good. And sometimes, the truth is, we actually look at something and we're pretty darn impressed. And we actually use what is, in our culture, a very typical phrase, you're so smart. You're so smart, you're so smart, you're so smart, you're so beautiful, you're so beautiful, you're so beautiful. What actually happens when we're saying things like that is that we are actually telling our child, if you didn't do it, if you were not capable, you are then the opposite of smart. You are stupid, or you are not smart. You are not intelligent. You're so beautiful. You're so talented. So if you were to make a mistake, that means you are no longer talented. We are actually framing the way in which we are allowing our kids to see who they are based on what we're saying to them. Now, trust me, I'm saying this, and I know what it feels like to be like, that's just not true. It's not my intent. In no way am I saying that. My kid does not believe that at all. That is not the way it works. Listen a little bit more, stay with me a little bit more, and listen to kind of how a fixed mindset child starts acting, and see if you start seeing either these things in yourself or in your child. And then go back and try and assess, could it possibly be when I say blah, blah, blah? Just so you know, there's a lot of research backing what I'm saying. And I can give you all that information if that will help, because I am definitely not pessimistic, but challenging. Like, you say this, but just because you say it doesn't mean it's necessarily true. There's a lot of research backed on what it is that I'm saying. So, this fixed mindset, people start learning, our children, especially in this conversation, are starting to learn that they have to be a certain way or it's done. You are only as good, the message, you are only as good as your last success. Or you're as bad as your last failure. So what we end up dividing, or what we end up having our children, not all of them, we have children, remember it's a spectrum, who are very scared at failing. Because if they fail, if they get critiqued, like that is wrong, they think somebody is telling them that there is actually something wrong with them, and that they are no longer having that thing that they once felt really strongly about. So a lot of us have our identity, a lot of my identity is in who I am as a speaker. So an example would be, if I were to speak too fast, if I were to not use the right words, if I were to have to use my computer, fixed mindset, little voice in the back of my head would be like, you're not perfect. You're a failure. Any good speaker who's trying to convey to parents should have all of this in their head. They shouldn't need to reference anything. And I say this because literally that is some of the voices that I have in my head. Totally sane voices, but still, they're still voices. They're these little things that are telling me I'm not good enough in who I am. So, in me giving that example, I'm letting you know I am more fixed mindset than I actually want to admit. I am getting better, and that's the cool part. We can change. We can alter our mindset. We can become more growth mindset orientated. And again, the growth mindset says that we are able to, with hard work and dedication, improve anything. There's actually, what is it, Malcolm Gladwell does Tipping Point and all that awesome stuff. He talks about that. He talks about the amount of time it actually takes to study or to do something, to become an expert. People are not just innately talented and then good at something. In fact, in sports psychology, research shows that it is not the most talented athletes who are successful. Typically, there are cases and examples where that is true. You can always find the outliers, right? Again, another awesome book. Outliers who don't fall into that and they just are naturally talented and they don't have to work very hard. Those people are like, right? We frustrate ourselves with that. But the truth is, we have the ability to work hard in anything we truly want and become successful. Most successful athletes did not start off just being successful and talented, and that's why they're great. Michael Jordan, the typical, I'm from Chicago, so I was Chicago. Michael Jordan did not make his freshman basketball team. What did he do? He worked his tail off, and his mom in interviews talks about he was outside every single day practicing. That is a growth mindset oriented person. I am not going to let one failure define who I am. Imagine Michael Jordan stopped playing basketball freshman year of high school. What basketball would actually look like. I mean, I know most of you are probably not from Chicago, and you all know who Michael Jordan is. He's amazing. He's an amazing athlete. I want to point that out just because I want you to understand what can happen in a fixed mindset is that we stop allowing feedback coming in, and everything is about saving our ego. And I also want to make sure that you all understand what we as parents are actually telling our kids during these times. You're so smart, you're so beautiful, you're this. I want to give you some feedback on things that could be more helpful when you are trying to assist your kids. I talked about how to be a better parent of an athlete, but I want to give you some suggestions on, okay, so what do I do then to feed this growth mindset? I kind of skipped over it and didn't talk about it very much. Basically, with the hard work and dedication, I can do anything. It's about framing situations and allowing your children to be able to grow based on adversity, things that are not feeling good. If we as parents, and I talked about this, if we as parents just allow our kids to not have an opportunity to fail, we are actually doing a disservice to them. We have got to fail in order to grow. That kind of is good news, right? Because we as parents can fail, and that's good for our kids. The more perfect you are, not necessarily, but there's a spectrum here. But failing as a parent gives your child the opportunity to know that they can also mess up. They do not have to be perfect. You get to take a little bit of that stress off your shoulders and go, all right, I should not have screamed at my kid, but I was super frustrated, I had a bad day at work, blah, blah, blah. Growth mindset would say, what do I do now at this point? You go and tell your kid, I had a really bad day at work. I have to apologize, I took it out on you. That was my fault. Though I am frustrated that you did not listen to me, and we know there are consequences for not listening to me, and that is blah, 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 you set the whatever your boundaries are. Call me up into .NET, I'll do psychotherapy, we can talk about it. Something totally different. We can talk about boundaries and all that kind of stuff. But you would say we have boundaries for when you don't listen. This is what happens as a consequence. However, I did not treat you kindly, and I should not have screamed at you the way I did. I apologize, it hurt me. And allow them the opportunity to see you fail, or fail. I mean, I do air quotes fail because it's actually not a failure. It's a success. Processing with your kids when you make a mistake, that it's okay to make a mistake. Because if you are like this as a parent, fixed mindset, which, oh, I'm scared to have more around me, kids, because I don't want to fail. Because I don't want to hurt somebody that I love so much. But the reality is you're going to hurt them more if you don't allow them to know when you have messed up.